Hey, hey, hey! Welcome everyone to the very first episode of the Musician's Mentor podcast. My name is Travis Mark, I'm going to be your host. And basically the goal here is to talk to musicians within various genres, across various vocations within the industry, about the music business. We're going to talk about mindset, attitude, goals, maybe things you should do or would want to consider doing, and mistakes. Mistakes that we make, how we learn along the way, etc., etc., etc. My very first guest is the Nashville-based / LA-based drummer, Rich Redmond, who currently tours and records, and he's a member of Jason Aldean's band. But in addition to that, he's kind of played with everybody. I mean, Luke Bryan, Chris Cornell, it goes on and on, but is so mind-blowingly just impressive that you've got to check this guy out. Rich is a motivational speaker, he's an actor, he's an author, he's big into music education. He's just a super, super duper inspirational guy. So I figured, who better to have than Rich? The best part about this interview for me, there's many parts, but it stays unedited. And from the very get-go, you can hear the just realness of musician life. So with that being said, let me stop my blabbering. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Rich Redmond. Hey Rich, how's it going?
Hey brother, how are you?
Good. Better time for you?
Totally better time. I'm in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I'm stepping off the bus.
Nice.
Playing a big festival tonight, and it's a big open field, and I'm wondering what that smell is. What's up? And the smell is horse poop.
It sounds like a lot of fun, man.
Oh, of course. Now they want to play the music over the PA, so I lost my good spot to talk. Let me go into the back of the bus.
Cool.
You're like, wow, you're a really problematic.
No, not at all.
Guest,
not at all. I mean,
you?
this is actually what this whole thing is going to be about. I'm trying to kind of just like be more open about music business, music mindsets, how it sort of is to be a functioning working musician, that kind of thing. And so this is perfect because it'll give the listeners a great way to sort of start and see that, like, someone like you who's so busy constantly, you've got to deal with these situations, and I think it's going to be great.
Got to be flexible for sure. All right, man. I'm in a safe spot. Let me just tell my band really quick that I'm gonna just where's that? Hey, I'm gonna do an interview in the back lounge if that's all right. But just come in, do what you got to do. But all right, we're set.
All right, cool. Well, I'll just I'll give you like a quick breakdown. Just so you kind of know where we're going to go with this. And then I've got a bunch of stuff prepared, but we'll see where the conversation goes and just go with it, so we might not even stick to that kind of thing. So we're going to talk more about the business, the sort of the mindset behind it. And you're quite, when I thought about doing this, you were the first guy I thought of, because I've always liked your attitude, you're sort of, I hate to use this term, but you're such a go-getter. And I love that about you and so many other musicians too, but I just think it's not something that gets spoken a lot about in musician sort of interviews. We're always talking about technique and tempos and what's your favorite rudiment and stuff like that. And I want to kind of avoid all that stuff. So we'll get into the nitty gritty stuff just so listeners who maybe aren't aware of who you are know who you are. But basically more questions are going to be based around that sort of stuff, okay?
Great, man.
Cool. All right. So with that being said, if you wouldn't mind, Rich, could you give us a little bit of a brief introduction, maybe a little bit of a summary of your career thus far? I know you've done tons, so that's like a really loaded question. But just so that listeners who maybe aren't aware of who Rich Redmond is, they'll have a better idea within the first few minutes.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for having me. Especially to be the first guest. Pressure's on, man. But no, I'll try to do a soundbite, like a TV news soundbite. I started playing in '76, a long time ago. I tell everybody I had to dodge a T-Rex to get to my drum lessons. I'm from the East Coast, little quaint little New England town, Connecticut, and I was hitting everything in sight. My dad said, "Hey kid, you want to play the drums?" He got me lessons, and I learned how to hold sticks and learn the rudiments, and I would learn how to read music immediately. And then I graduated into some Joel Rothman books and got my coordination together. Then we moved to Texas, which was great because Texas has awesome music education culture. And I got my feet wet with like marching bands and pep bands and concert bands and symphonic bands and orchestras and, of course, garage bands and all that stuff. And the Police came out in 1983 with an album called Synchronicity. And that's when I decided at, 13 years old, this is what I'm going to do with my life. And I haven't looked back since. And I ended up going to the Texas Tech University and then the famed University of North Texas, kind of where guys like Greg Bissonette and Steve Houghton and Keith Carlock, Jason Sutter, all kind of Jim Riley. We all went to school there. It's a great school. And moved to Nashville in 1996, 97. And, played with a lot of who's who of country rock music. And I met an up and coming singer named Jason Aldean in 1999. And we did endless showcases and started doing demo sessions for him and jumping in vans. And then we got him a record deal. And then he put out his first single. And that was 23 years ago. And, since then, I've gotten the chance to play on like 31 number one songs and all the late night and morning television shows from like Good Morning America to Saturday Night Live. And I work on Music Row in Nashville. I have a presence in Los Angeles. I have a lot of drums in Los Angeles, and we'll do some work out there. I'm a big believer in music education. So, I've written 2 Amazon bestsellers, one for young people on how to play the drums, and one that's kind of more of like a half biopic and half kind of like a advice for success in life and business. And I do a lot of teaching, drum clinics, and around that I do some motivational speaking, that kind of stuff. And so I just try to keep active in the arts and pushing the needle forward,
Totally. And again, not to sound like a broken record, but it's one of the things I love about you. I've followed you for a while, and it's just so cool to talk to you. So thanks again for taking the time, man. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about the sort of the motivational stuff for a second. We'll get back to the drumming thing in a bit, but I know that that's like a big thing for you. I mean, anyone who goes to check out your website, which I'll list in the show notes, will see that that's a big part of who you are. So in terms of attitude, your attitude is, again, to go back to what I said earlier, is so, move forward, go getter, stay on top of it, promptness, that kind of thing. So why do you think having a good attitude in this business, especially where it currently is so important?
Oh, it's so important in any business. I mean, even if something like, say you're an employee at, there's a restaurant in the States called Chick-fil-A, and it's just a really nice chicken sandwich. And when you go there, it's super clean. And the employees say, my pleasure. Whenever you ask for anything, they say, my pleasure. They're trained to say that. And it automatically just creates this great feeling in the customer, like we're getting a valuable product, but at the same time, it's an amazing experience. Same reason why I go to, I love mom and pop coffee shops, but I like to go to Starbucks because when you go in, you feel like you're part of this culture. It's a $5 coffee, but for that $5, you're getting usually a smiling person that's taking your order. They usually get your name right. And it's a feeling, it's an experience. So providing an experience for the customer. And, it's really about enthusiasm, and I know for a fact that enthusiasm is contagious. I've seen it in action a million times. There's a million guys out there that can walk into a recording session, have the right drums, have the right snare drum, be able to take direction, read charts, play with a click. But, what the difference is really like attitude, like the way you make people feel and how they feel in your presence and how they remember that experience, because life is just a collection of experiences. So it's just, that's really what it's all about is attitude. Like 99.9% of life is attitude. It really is. It's like the one thing without fail that people will remember about you. And in the music business, back in the day, the Velvet Ropes and the cocaine and the Velvet Ropes era of the music business, everything was just falling into people's laps. And there was a lot of people that were enjoying massive success, that weren't even really that great. But now we're in a business where we're in a failure business, we're in a dying business, and so to do things at a high level and to achieve your dreams, you really have to set yourself apart, and that's usually about just kind of pumping your chest and letting the world know you exist, and then following through with the goods. Because it's just usually nowadays is there's so much noise, so much people that want to do this, that to set yourself apart, you really have to have a great attitude, be the first one in the room, the last one to leave, firm handshake, be great at what you do, and provide this awesome experience and run your business like a business, because we are running a business. When you're a drummer, even if you're just a wedding band guy, you want to pull up in a, you got to have a nice, reliable vehicle. You got to, your clothes have got to be dry clean. The drums have got to sound good. You got to know the songs. You got to be able to play loud or soft. And they say, hey, you guys are not allowed to eat any of the groom's cake. So don't eat the groom's cake, and then you'll get invited back time and time again. So attitude is really so important in life. It's the one thing that I always remember, like when someone says like, yeah, great musician, but man, what a horrible attitude. The phone's not going to ring. It's going to ring for people that have that, the all around package. Nice person, smile, easy to work with, can take direction, because the skills of playing the drums and doing that at the highest level is an expectation. It's like, you're not going to get brownie points for that. That's what's expected of you. But it's this other stuff, like your people skills and your mindset, that will truly separate you from other people.
Yeah, I agree with that. So is that something you think you worked on as you were getting more involved within the industry? Or was that just something you were always maybe natural with, even from a young age?
It was just a natural thing for me, just because I have great parents. They're just super positive, hardworking people, an accountant and a nurse, and they know about the value of hard work and family, and they're people, so they love people, and they pass that down to me. And then just a zeal, a zest for life, and an enthusiasm for life, and an appreciation and a humility and gratitude for being able to put a price tag on creativity. Because my mom, she could, when I say, hey, Mom, this gig pays $300. And she goes, Rich, do you know what I have to do as a nurse to make $300? I have to work a 12-hour shift covered in bodily fluids with people dying all around me.
Wow.
And you're playing, Iggy Azalea songs for appreciated people that are there. They're dancing, they're smiling. She goes, so, never take this for granted. You have a very charmed life. So, no, it always came very natural, but I always like to, study successful people and read people that write positive literature, so the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, or Zig Ziglar books, or Napoleon. I'm a student of Napoleon Hill, The Law of Attraction. There was a book called The Secret and a movie called The Secret that I watched every day, twice a day for like 2 months. And this stuff just gets in your DNA. And that way it becomes part of the way you run your life. Yeah, but I'm just I'm a spaz. I'm just a really outgoing person, and I love that's why I love spending time in Los Angeles, because it's like so sunny. You wake up, there's a palm tree that's like peeking into your bedroom window, and the sun is shining, and you just feel like you want to get out there and like do life.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a little harder in Nashville because we have the 4 seasons, and then we have this like 4 months of gray, and it's like, I miss the sun.
Yeah.
But once I get up and I get going and I have that cup of coffee, I know that this gift that I've been given by my higher power has the ability to affect people in such a positive way. I got to put my shoes on and I got to get to work. And when I say work, it's in quotation marks, because my work is so fun. And that's something that, hopefully people can strive for in their life, is to find something that they do that they love, and it never feels like work. And if it doesn't feel like work, you end up working harder, and then the harder you work, you actually end up attracting more successful scenarios to your life. People, places, circumstances, opportunities will cross your path. And it's in the words of the great Dom Famularo, it becomes a cycle of self-empowerment,
Yeah. Yeah, and what's the famous quote? If you do something you love, you never work a day in your life, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
what about your role as a motivational speaker? When did you start that? How did you get into it, and how do you relate it back to your music career? Because I'm assuming what you do is you do your kind of speaking, and obviously it has to come up that you've played with all these famous people and you've had all these number ones, and I'm sure it has to relate somehow. But how do you relate it?
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate it. It's, my career track, it provides the opportunity or the reason that people would want to hire me to speak, because people want to hear successful people and they want to hear about their journey, and like, hey, can you give me any shortcuts or some advice that any group in any room and any age can relate to and take home with them. But I've always been an educator. I have a teacher's heart. Like I said, I have my master's degree in music education, and I decided to like get it in education because, if you're a great player, you can be a great player. You don't necessarily need a degree that says I got a performance degree. So, I could, I studied formal at marimba and jazz vibes and like timpani and multi percussion and ethnic, all that stuff, but then, I took a page from Greg Bissonette's playbook. He got a degree in music education, which is, it's just a cool little backup plan that allows you to, teach high schools and colleges. And that little master's degree has like paid off many times. Like when I was teaching at the Musicians Institute, they really appreciated that I had a master's degree. When I was teaching at the University of Northern Alabama as a drum set instructor, that was a requirement, must have a master's degree. So anyways, that was a good thing to do. But I always have been a teacher. And what's great about having the ability to teach is you have to have you have to be an effective communicator, which means you need to be able to break down and explain anything that you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're doing it, and it makes you better at what you do. And since I've always been a student of motivation, there's always been a motivational element to even just breaking down rudiments, or having kids at my master classes. I have everybody come up and play. So they immediately get feedback. Hey, your right hand is too heavy on the hi-hat, or try not burying the bass drum beater, or your posture needs work, or, you're dragging it. So they immediately can go home with some sort of like thing to improve. And then one day I was teaching a master class, and a friend of mine, Anthony Grady, who, I mean, now friend, he was a stranger at the time, he came and he saw my thing, and he goes, hey man, I work for Cisco. It's one of the, they basically run the internet. And it's this huge global Fortune 100 company. I mean, they have $50 billion in the bank that they don't use. Some of the stuff that you're talking about is very universal and applicable to corporate America. And I was like, well, I've always planned on being a motivational speaker as a side hustle, and I didn't really know how to get there. I knew I was going to do it. But Anthony fast-tracked me, and he got me a job speaking for Cisco, and I knocked it out of the ballpark, and then they had me come back, and I've done 12 events for Cisco. And then that leads just to other things, and then people talk. It's like anything you do, if you're showing up and you're doing a great job, word of mouth is such a great way to get more work over resumes and websites. You got to have resumes and websites and business cards and all that stuff. But word of mouth, like nothing travels faster than word of mouth. So Anthony changed my life. He fast tracked my desire to do something. And maybe that's a spiritual thing. Maybe that's just a thing you write down. Like, I will be a motivational speaker. I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to not stop until I get there. And then Anthony crosses my path.
Amazing.
And then he gets me. Yeah. And then you just keep kind of building on that.
Well, it kind of goes back to The Secret. I've seen The Secret, big fan of that book and the movie or documentary, if you want to call it that. And it's like you put these things out there, they seem to come back, and unfortunately, the negative things do too. So I think a lot of people don't keep that in mind, and some people, going back to the attitude thing, they will almost think negatively about so many things, especially within the music industry. And then they don't understand why they're not getting work. But maybe they put that out there. I mean, there's definitely something to that, man. I believe it.
Definitely. Yeah, you reap what you sow. So it's really good to have like a mantra or a purpose statement, or write your dreams and your goals down, write those things down. Like when I moved to Nashville, the first week I moved to town, I wrote down on a piece of paper, I will be a top call touring and recording drummer based in Nashville. One sentence, completely succinct. And I wrote it down, I laminated it, and I looked at it. And then I got up every day and I tried to make that thing happen with my attitude and my actions. And then, I'm playing down on Lower Broadway for tips, and then someone sees me and walks in, and then they tell a friend, and then before you know it, I go to 19 countries, and I'm playing for the military all over the world, and then you put that on your resume, and then someone else goes, yeah, we're gonna go do that same thing, and then you do it like, hey, this guy's getting a record deal, and I heard you're good, and it just one thing leads to another, and if you're consistently putting out a good product, the product being your talent, then people talk, and the good news travels fast, but the bad news travels twice as fast. So if you're a negative Nelly and you're like, I said I wanted cold water, this is horrible catering. Oh, these are, you're good, especially in the early days of developing a music career, we slept on airport floors. We ate ramen noodle. We had to play on the house band's CB 700 drum set with camber cymbals, and you just do these things and with a smile on your face, and then the circumstances get better. And now as I'm talking to you, I'm on a beautiful tour bus with my best friends who I've been working with for 23 years. Got 3 meals a day. There's a drum tech that is also my best friend that I've been working with for 10 years. He's setting up and taking care of my drums. Tonight we go out and we play a 90-minute show full of hits. People sing along to every word, and there's a check in my account every 2 weeks. It's like, oh my God! But I hung in there through the roughest parts of the music industry to earn that,
But it makes it so much sweeter, right? Like you've manifested what you wanted. You got it. I mean, you worked really hard, no doubt, to get it. But you're living the dream, man, and it's deserved. So props to you, man.
Well, thank you so much.
So let's say you're a new musician, or maybe you're a musician. You've been in the practice room for a while. You're ready to get out there. You want to start gigging. What advice would you give up and comers on trying to firstly get some gigs, and secondly keep the gigs?
Oh yeah, great advice. Well, there's a million great drummers in their mom's basement. And that's awesome. But this is a people business, and you have to make music with people. So the best thing you could do is get out and go see other bands and support the community that you're in, and go to open mics and find out what the music scene is in your area and be involved in that thing. And then, start putting your own bands together. And then, if there's some working scenarios like, like I said, like wedding bands or corporate bands or tribute bands, these are great learning vehicles, because a wedding drummer has to play music from all the way back from like 1920, the birth of jazz, all the way through new wave, the Beatles, Motown, Stax Records, Chess Records. You're doing the chicken dance, you're doing the Macarena, you're playing Iggy Azalea, Drake. That's a lot. You're covering a lot of ground. You might be playing with tracks or sequences. And that's a great, great learning tool. I have a student of mine, her name's Sarah Cardeal, and she's in Connecticut, and she's got herself into the best wedding band in Connecticut. And she paid cash for a brand new vehicle, and she's saving money to move to Nashville. And I'm like, good for you, kid. She's a go-getter. She gets out there. She goes to see live concerts. Social media is a great way now for you to break the ice. If there's a drummer that you love, you could send the guy a DM. And a lot of times these guys they're bored at airports, and they'll write you back, hey kid, thanks for reaching out to me. I really appreciate it. And then you could write back, hey, you're going to be at the Wolf Den in Hartford, Connecticut. Can I meet you and buy you a cup of coffee? And then sometimes these famous musicians will be like, yeah, kid, let's use WhatsApp, or here's my number, text me. You never know. And Sarah is a go-getter, and she literally, anytime anybody goes through Connecticut, so me, Kenny Aronoff, Mark Schulman, Matt Starr, like Ray Luzier, she goes and sits on the drum riser at soundcheck and watches everybody do their thing, because she's just so effervescent and enthusiastic about what she wants to do, and she has no shame or reservations about putting herself out there. And so it's not really a business for shy people. You got to figure out how to I mean, there's some amazing musicians that are introverts, right? But people ask me all the time, well, do you have any advice for introverts? And I say, yeah, get out. Get out of your bedroom. Now, there also is, I just went to go see Def Leppard yesterday. They created their new record during the pandemic by recording remotely in 3 different countries. So we have the technology to do that, and it's happening with good results. But I mean, the pandemic just about killed me mentally because I'm a people person and I missed people. So I still love the idea of being in the room with my friends at the same time, creating a product just like they did in Motown. Boom, boom. I know you want 10 people on the floor, somebody stomping on a wood plank, 2 guitar players, bass player, percussionist, drum. That to me is magic, and I hope it never goes away. We do that in Nashville still. Less in New York and LA. There's people all making music at the same time in Nashville. But it's just about getting out there, getting involved in your community, finding like-minded people to make music with, people that have the same, experiences or goals or things that they want to accomplish in life. Look at the greatest bands, your U2s, your Van Halens, your Polices, and they were just young people that wanted to conquer the world, and they did it together by the sweat of their brow, and that is a great thing. So it's a community-based language. The language of music is about people, so you can't know enough people. You got to get out there, shake trees, crash parties, and meet people.
Yeah. You know what I like about that era of bands that you just listed was it kind of seemed like those bands were gangs, and they sort of came out almost with like a gang mentality. It was like them against the world, which, some of the modern music, I don't mean to sound like I'm hating on modern music. I don't. I love all music, but some of it you can feel that desperation, that urgency, that sort of energy that came through, like on a Police record, for example. You listen to any of those live Police recordings. I mean, man, it's almost like they're running from fire. There's so much energy coming from those guys that I sometimes think that
Yeah.
that's sometimes missing now, and it's probably because, like you say, the everybody getting in a room like you would have back at Sun Records or Stack Records or any of those kinds of places, it seems to be less of a thing, and modern technology is wonderful. I mean, we wouldn't be able to do this the way we're doing it if we didn't have the technology we have. But sometimes I think some of that magic, if you want to use that word, does get lost. So all interesting
No,
points.
I agree.
All interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of just corporatized, bands that are just put together where there's like a beautiful front man and they're surrounded with like other dudes wearing all black in the back, and and that's cool because there's all sorts of different type of jobs available for people in the music business. But they were truly, you're right, those bands, they were like motorcycle gangs, and people used to tell us that in the early days because we'd all have our wallet chains and we would just be like thick as thieves, like going in to just conquer the world. Even just like my friends, like Kurt Allison and Tully Kennedy, who I go way back with 25 years. We, in the early days of Nashville, we put on our leather jackets with our wallet chains. We just went out. We never had any money, but sometimes we always had money for like a cocktail. We'd go to the bar. It was always 3 of us. It was like Night at the Roxbury, like
that's awesome.
And it was just like us against the world. And then we brought that energy to Aldean's camp, and we just grew the thing, and we just never stopped. And we always had just something to prove. It was dangerous, man. We were just dangerous dudes. We just wanted to prove that we existed and had something to say. And I think that's really, really what it takes, because it's just such a tough business. Anything in the arts is going to require massive blood, sweat, and tears, and falling in love with rejection and just continuing to show up. But it can be done, it can be done.
Yeah, most definitely. So just reverting back to my previous question. So, now we fast forward a little bit. The musicians got a couple gigs, etc., 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 and they're trying to do their thing. Maybe they stuck in a little bit of a rut. Maybe they're loving what they're doing. Who knows? But if you look at someone like yourself, your credit list, it's really like a who's who of some of the top names in this industry. So, what advice would you offer drummers, or let's broaden the landscape a little? Musicians who are already gigging, maybe working full-time musicians, club guys, etc., 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 wedding guys. They maybe want to step it up. They want to try get a bigger gig with a more recognized artist, someone who's maybe got a bit more credibility. Would you sort of follow the same advice that you gave with just trying to get the gigs, or would you take some different steps on trying to maybe step into that sort of area?
Yeah. I think getting those gigs, those bigger gigs, it's like, being a restaurateur where it's like location is everything. You can have the greatest food in the world, but unless you're on the right corner and attract the right traffic, the restaurant's not going to succeed, right? So you got to go to the watering holes. So like in the States, it's like New York, LA, Nashville. There's also, Austin, Chicago, Miami. But man, depending on what kind of like music you want to play, because there's these management offices there and there's the scenes there. So it's like, and if you want to move to Nashville, you can have the potential to get like a great mainstream country job. There's the alt country stuff. There's like underground indie rock happening. We have a great symphony. There's tons of Christian rock. You go to Austin and it's more like they have like these red dirt country acts where you can put you could tour all over Texas. And if you get the right one, your band could be a millionaire band, Miami, there's like a lot of bilingual, like, pop type acts that are coming out of there. Los Angeles is like the sky's the limit. It's one of the entertainment capitals of the world. So you go there, you could hook up with them, just a straight ahead, be the drummer in one of these like dinosaur classic rock bands that records all the time, or the next great thing that's coming out, or a new K-pop band, or you can get a gig with a Chinese, rock star, because a lot of times those people, they look for American musicians, you know what I mean? So just kind of what you're interested in, you kind of pinpoint it. Maybe you book a flight and you go spend a weekend in New York City, you can get a Broadway gig, or you can, hook up with like a Bublé or something like that. Or you go to Nashville and you're like, wow, people are really friendly here and it's more affordable than New York. Or you go to LA, you spend the weekend in LA, you're like, oh my God, it's really expensive here. How does anybody ever going to get a house? And I'm in my car, 12 hours a day. So you're going to have to live in one of these places, right? So the best thing you could do is to go to those places and check those things out and see if the culture of the people and the weather and just everything vibes with you. Maybe you got kids and you got to be in a good school district. So, Nashville might be good for that, so there's a lot of factors, and not only being a musician and getting to the next level as a musician, but also like quality of life and where do you want to live your life? Because it might take 5 years to get connected to the level that you want to get connected. So that could be 5 years of doing gigs you don't want to do, and or working a day job. So where you live is kind of important. But it's all about people and being in those right circles. You're not going to I'm not going to say never, but you're probably not going to get a big touring gig with a killer K-pop band living in Des Moines, Iowa, or Fargo, North Dakota, or Lubbock, Texas. I mean, you really got to go to New York, LA, Nashville. Those are the 3 big places. And then you just set up camp. Another mistake a lot of people make is they say, I would move there if I got a gig. Well, let me tell you, you ain't going to get the gig unless you move there. So the best thing you could do is just save a little money and put a date on the calendar that when you're going to leave. Because if you don't do that, 5 years can go. You're like, well, because there's never a right time to make the move, because it's a big, scary thing. Say you're like in the #1 wedding band in Dallas, Texas, and you're making $40,000 a year, which is respectable as a musician. You don't have to work a day job. You do a little teaching on the side. Hey, it's a good little hustle. It's a good little lifestyle, but you want more, but it's really scary to go to a Nashville and start all over at the bottom. But you're not going to get to the next level if you don't go there. So it's this scary hurdle that you just have to do. And the younger you do it, the better, don't go so young that you don't have any life experience, like you just got out of college, you just got done playing in a big band and you've never played in like a pop or rock band or a cool mainstream country band, and then you move to Nashville and you can't play with the click and you don't know about Ableton and you've never done a percussion overdub. It's not really a place to make mistakes. Like these big markets, you want to get some more experience so that when you go, you're just like ready. You're like, ta-da, here I am, but you got to get to those places, and it's a youth oriented business, and it's ageism is a real thing, and so you got to kind of go, get it in like your mid-20s is like a great time.
Yeah. No, good. So, last thing about gigging, at least for now. I mean, you've done it all. You've done the sleeping on airport floors. You're now in a luxury tour bus. You've stayed all around the world, etc., etc., etc. I know you have a drum tech now, but obviously things still go wrong, So over the course of your career, what would you say are some of your must-know gig survival tips?
Oh, good one, man. Well, first of all, when it comes to learning the music, the drummer has to know the material better than anyone on that stage, better than the musical director, better than the artist. Know what the song is about, know the lyrics, know the form, know the length of the bars and the pre-chorus, know the guts and the anatomy of the song. If there's a drummer that played on the song other than you, know every single part, every hi-hat opening, where every crash is, everything. That's your building block. The artist may expect you to play everything note for note, and then you also might run into a situation where they're like, no, I hired you to be you, so you do you, which still means got to have 95% of it there. And then the other 5% is that sprinkle of that thing that sets you apart from the rest of the world, So knowing the tempo, knowing everything inside and out. If there's triggers or technology or loops or samples, be so comfortable with that stuff. Be able to nail the tempo with a click or without a click. Be able to adjust your dynamics. Somebody wants a fat snare drum. Great. You have your roots EQ things you could throw in there, your big fat snare drum things, or a roll of gaff tape. You got your lug locks to tighten up the snare so it doesn't loosen on you. Maybe you know all of your you have all of your your drum tech secrets, which have two of everything. You have a backup snare drum that's ready to go, tuned exactly the same as the one that's on the stage. You have another backup pedal ready to go. You have another load of cymbals in case things crack and you're touring and you're in the middle of nowhere. So, and you have your toolbox, with your WD-40s and felts and tools and all that stuff, an extra bass drum head that's kind of like ready to go. So you're just preparing for Murphy's Law, that pesky Murphy who is like, if something is going to go wrong, it'll go wrong at the worst time. And so, you just got to be able to help yourself without a drum tech, like quickly patch a bass drum head or swap out the snare drum. You tell the lead singer, tell him a joke, and you just need 10 seconds to pull up that other snare drum and swap it out, So you're preparing for the worst things that could possibly happen. Tons of sticks. You got to have sticks. You got to have brushes. You got to have rods. You got to have mallets, gaff tape. A trick for doing backline shows is don't be precious, because there's a lot of bands that operate on Southwest Airlines, and there's a backup drum set. So have your rider together. It's super detailed. You send the rider. You show up. You go like, oh, there's some old Yamaha recording customs from the 82. It's got pinstripes on it. Okay, I can make this work, because you have your gaff. You got your big fat snare drums. You got your lug locks. You got your pedal. You got your favorite snare drum. You got your cymbals. You got your stick bag. You can make that thing work. And then you have your Tama rhythm watch, and then your ears, and maybe you have your own power strip and extension cable. And if you have a big floor tom case, you can make this all work. So you put the snare drum in the bottom of the case, you put a towel on top of it, you got your stick bag, your pedal, your tools, your parts, your click, your ears, all that should be under 50 pounds. Boom. And it flies, it shows up. And that way you can personalize any backline drum set in the world. So between your rider and that floor tom case, and then a level of preparation, professionalism, and an open spirit and attitude, you can make any backline drum set in the world work.
Cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that floor tom thing, actually. That's quite a nice idea, the case.
Yeah. And your cymbals, like cymbals are, especially jazzers, jazzers will take their cymbals on the flight and they'll sweet talk the stewardess and they'll say, hey, can I put this in the coat rack, up front? And, and because they've hand selected these Ks from the last 50 years. And, I'm more of like a boom schmacker, on most of the gigs so it's like, okay, these, I just throw them in a Humes and Bird case and they're in the bay of the airplane. So, but if you have one thing of luggage and you have your floor tom case and you have your cymbals, that's 3 items. And most airlines charge you for each item. And so, the people you're working with, they have to understand and they have to eat that cost. And if you have to eat that cost for whatever reason, then save all your receipts and it's all tax deductible. But just having those items can help you personalize because cymbals are so personal. And sometimes I risk using a backline pedal, but what if it's some horrible, Ludwig thing from 1968 and it's all squeaky. You got to have your DW 9000 so you can get the job done.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say has been the hardest lesson you've had to learn as a musician so far?
Well, I think a lot of, it's finances really because, because it's like supply and demand. There's so many people that want to do it and management people and band people, they know that. And so it's like, look at this, what this thing pays. Do you want it or not? Because if you don't want it, someone's going to take it. And then when you start to get the money, you have to be kind of smart about how the things you do with that, especially because I have friends of mine, I've had the same job for, 20 years. So that is a rarefied air to know that I'm going to get a check every 2 weeks. Now I have other friends who've done really well. They bought multiple houses. They have a comfortable lifestyle. They can get sushi when they want to get sushi, but they don't know where their next paycheck is coming from. So they do smart things like, okay, like every time a check comes in, they try to save half of it like a squirrel for the winter. So because that gig that they're on can go away, or maybe they're making great money while they're on tour for that 6 months and then they don't work again for 6-7 months, but they still have a house note. They still got to eat. They still got to pay for their life. So that's one of the most challenging things is just figuring out how to do your things with your finances to have a quality of life and, kind of prepare for that rainy day. It's a tough thing.
Yeah. So now, again, this is possibly unrelated because I know you're really successful as a drummer. You could probably be just a drummer and you financially would be perfectly okay until you decide to retire. But you also do the actor thing, the author thing, the speaker thing. So you're quite diverse. How important, I mean, I know you spoke briefly about the sort of the backup plan of the teacher's degree, but how important do you think diversity is for up and coming musicians? There's a lot of these look, I got to be honest, I was one of them. When I decided I was going to be a musician a billion years ago, I was like, I'm not going to have a plan B. I had that kind of go getter, I'm going to make it work regardless. And I'm lucky I've made it work.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, as I get older, I sometimes wonder if maybe having a plan B would have made my life easier. And so, how important do you think diversity is for, especially up and coming musicians? Maybe guys who are listening to this who like the sort of scenarios we've spoken about already, maybe they aren't quite deep in it yet. They still maybe deciding that they're going to do this. Should they sort of focus on diversity? Should they focus 100% just on what they're trying to do? What would you say?
God, I think that's a generational thing. Like when I was coming up, like even I had that backup plan. The plan was to never use the backup plan. And my backup plan is so practical because from studying music education, I learned how to score for a marching band and a symphony. And I learned how to conduct and all this really useful, like reading music. Oh my God, I became an expert at reading music. And that's something that has helped me. Probably the most important thing in my life is the ability to read music, whether someone hands me a chart on a cruise ship or for an off-Broadway thing or for a jingle. I can read it down. If somebody wants me to create my own chart, I can do that as well. And so that becoming an expert in that really, really, it was like a game changer. Probably owe my entire career to the ability to read music and play styles, but back in the day, me and like Jim Riley and Jason Sutter and all of us, we were just like, we're gonna do this drumming thing, and we're not gonna do anything else. So we put in the tens of thousands of hours. Now, as the music business is changing, people have side hustles. Maybe someone might do a little real estate. Maybe some guy does some road managing on the side, or one guy's got a hot sauce company, or, they just one guy's got a nice teaching business, or they create online products. So there's some mailbox money and some reliable sources of income that are coming in. They're still kind of in the lane. Everything that I do is still in the lane of entertainment. So, the speaking, the authoring, and the acting and the teaching are all within the realm of music and entertainment and monetizing my personality, really, basically. So you have to maybe look at your skill sets, your natural skill sets and your natural interests, and say, what are some other things that are within the lane of that are God-given that I might be able to monetize and also enjoy? I didn't really do any of these other things until I, quote unquote, became an expert at doing that one thing. But I don't know if people can do that anymore, because the music business is on its knees, right? So it's like, it's really kind of smart from day one to have some other little thing happening, maybe it's, and the drummer in the band is always like the person that does the web design for the band, or the person that does the graphic design or does the social media. Like, the drummer usually has some sort of like fun skill set that they can bring to the band. I don't know, in my experience, drummers are so outgoing, but it's a tough thing. You have to be, like I said, it's an expectation for you to be an expert at playing the drums. But since the music business is not healthy right now, it's almost good from day one to be thinking of some other little thing that you can offer right away.
Yeah.
And some guys do these things in secret. Like, they're like, yeah, don't tell anybody that I do real estate, or other people are just like, it's like, da-da, this is what I do. Yeah, man, I play drums with this big artist, and then I have this other family business. I own a pizzeria. My kids run it. Just something, that is reliable.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And none of the things that I do, yes, I have a lot of things that I do, but none of them are reliable at all, which is crazy. There's nothing 100% about anything I do. Everything I do requires my time.
Yeah.
And talent. If the acting thing is like a small little cherry on my creative pie. And I've accepted that, because it's most actors do 100 auditions a year to get one job. And I'm riding around on tour buses in an airport. So it's hard for me to do the 100 auditions to get the one job. And then if I do get the one job, a lot of times I'm not available. So it's just like Tetris. It's like trying to get a hole in one as a golf guy. So sometimes some people will just be like, I'll meet people at the top end of the industry, and they're like, hey man, you are perfect for this thing. You are this guy. When can you film this thing? You know what I mean? And so those are a lot of these opportunities I look for, and it's just so fun. And it's not really a money thing, because most actors spend more money on the craft than they actually make.
Yeah. Yeah, but if it's fun, a cool little break from the regular musician day job thing, right? So that's kind of cool.
Totally. Yeah.
So, Rich, tough question, but what do you think the best piece of advice you've ever received has been?
Best piece of advice? Man.
Yeah, it's a loaded question. And I've been interviewing guys for years. I mean, again, this is a different thing. And I always ask them that question. It's kind of a crappy question, because it's like, especially to be put on the spot with it. I mean, by the time you've been in the industry as long as someone like yourself has, you've been given so much great advice from probably so many great people. So I know it's a tough one to nail down, but just give it a shot.
Yeah, well, you would think that after all these years, I would just have it just like ready to go, boom. But I think it comes. It's more of just like a sense of what other successful people have done, and just modeling myself, after them. And all my great, professors in college and teachers, they were just like preparation. Preparation is the key to all things, and being over prepared. Like when I said, the drummer has to know the material inside and out, like better than anyone on that stage, because we are the leaders. Even if we're not, our name isn't on the marquee, even if we're not the musical director, our instrument is so forceful, it's so powerful, and it sets the tone and the vibe and the energy of any music we create. We have to be over prepared. So being over prepared, and then bringing a high level of enthusiasm. So exceeding expectations, being over prepared, and being incredibly enthusiastic, and really never having a bad day, no matter what. You have to show up, and it doesn't matter if you're jet lagged or tired or if you have the flu. You just have to. That's the best thing about our job, is it's the greatest job in the world, and the worst part of our job is that you can never call in sick,
Yeah.
ever. You could just never call in sick. But I think just from modeling and having great teachers is bringing a high level of preparedness, over preparedness, constantly exceeding expectations, providing an amazing experience for people in the room, bringing that enthusiasm, and then it's just rinse and repeat. You just do that for the rest of your life, and that's how you create a reputation that precedes you. And it's, this whole industry is based on one's reputation. So if somebody gives you an opportunity, the way you thank them for that opportunity is by knocking that thing out of the ballpark, and you make them look good.
I like that. That's actually a great, great piece of advice. You
Yeah.
you might have just answered that question if anyone ever asks me that question.
Yeah, just be prepared. I mean, it's very disrespectful to have someone champion you, and they say, "Oh yeah, call my friend," and you got to learn 40 songs by tomorrow, and the person shows up and they're running a little late, and they got a bad attitude, and they don't know the songs. And that is not the way to thank your friend for the referral. The way to thank your friend for the referral is to show up so early and be so over prepared and know every note of that stuff, and the tempos and the arrangements and the forms. And I show up and I have my charts, and they're alphabetized. They're alphabetized first in case the person doesn't have a set list and they just want to call songs. Boom, I could pull them up quickly alphabetically, and then if you're there early, you can talk to the person, and you're like, "Hey, are we doing sets? Do you call audibles?" And like, "Oh no, we'll do sets." And I'm like, "Okay, what are they?" Boom, and I put my charts in order. I go and I use the restroom, and I stretch, and I do my rudiments, and I warm up, and I've got a big smile on my face, and it's like, the guy that usually does the job, he and I might not be doing the job anymore, because you prepare. You don't want that to be the case, but it's just like, you want the person to be just like, "Dude, thank you."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, almost just go in over prepared so that they just appreciate the fact that you did such a good job.
Yeah, it's just what you call being a professional. And it's like, people think that the music business is all sex, drugs, and rock and roll, sleep in till noon. It's really, no, it's like, we're our own agents and personal trainers and nutritionists and managers, and we have to do it all. And yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. It takes a lot of work and consistency to do at a high level, and to stay working at a high level.
Completely. And that's the whole point of this podcast, the website, the blogs, all that kind of stuff. It's like I'm trying to hopefully just make some younger people, up and coming people, guys who haven't quite decided to bite the bullet yet. I'm trying to make them understand that it's a tough job, but you can do it. It's just you have to understand how to be self-employed. Because, in my experience, and I'm not going to flip this around because I don't want to take too much more of your time. I've only got a couple more questions. But in my experience, a lot of guys who, it seems like every year I meet some guys who weren't trying to do the gig thing or the working thing the year before, and they come with such good attitudes. This is like January. It's almost like a New Year's resolution. I'm going to do this music thing. How do I do this? What should I do here? How does this work? Etc. 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 And because it's so tough, usually by about March, they back in their day jobs, and they're so quick to say how there's no money in the music industry. Well, I know the music industry has taken a beating over the last few decades, but there is money. I mean, like, you don't have to be broke. You can be a self employed musician and have quite a good lifestyle if you do some of the things that we've spoken about already. And I just think that's the whole point behind this thing, just to try and make people understand that
Yeah.
this is totally doable. It's just like you say, it's down to your attitude. It's down to what you're willing to put in. Are you willing to sleep in a car? Are you willing to do that one free gig because maybe it leads to a better gig? Are you willing to go learn 40 songs, like you said, even though you might never get to play with those guys again? It's all, it's like wants and musts and what you're willing to do, what you must do, etc., for what you want, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah, and we're all self-employed. I mean, even at the highest of levels, we're self-employed um, as sidemen. As sidemen musicians, and there's two ways to approach it. You could be the big fish in the small pond, or you could be a player. You could be part of a community, like. Just to be in the community of drummers in Nashville and Los Angeles is unbelievable. To be swimming with those sharks, these friends and colleagues that are just world-class musicians, is unbelievable. But also, you can be in a small town and you can maximize. Like, if you're willing to do the hustle, it's like you can back up. You could play hand drums at dance recitals and dance studios. You could be in the cool wedding and corporate band. You could play jazz brunches. You could play in the big church in town and do services on Sundays and Wednesdays. You could teach at the community college and teach the drum line at the high school. You could have a private teaching studio. You put all those things together. There's a little studio work in town. In other words, you're the big fish. If someone needs a drummer or percussionist in that city, you're the man. And you do all the work and you do the grind, and then you can find the right mortgage person and you can get a house. The house that drums built. And that's a life, and it's a grind. And I was doing that in Dallas, Texas. And I said, there's a glass ceiling here. I'm doing everything I could possibly do as a working drummer and percussionist in this city. I maximized. I played in the cool big band. I had a fusion band. I did the jazz brunches. I played in the big charismatic, church on Sundays and Wednesdays. I was in the top 40 band in town. I played in a tuxedo in all the big bands around town. I did jingles for the Texas Lottery. I taught in schools. I taught outside of schools. But I was like, this is not what I want to do. I want to hear myself on the radio. I want to see myself on television, and I want to travel the world. It is not going to happen for me in Dallas, Texas. The right person has not walked into that club smoking a cigar going, hey, kid, you got the goods. Come with me. It never happened. So to make that next goal happen, I had to go and eat crow and be at the bottom of the food chain in Nashville. And then it took 25 years to work my way up the food chain. And so I could be a small fish in a big pond. And now I'm one of the bigger fishes in the big pond. But it took 25 years. Took 25 years.
Longevity, man. Again, it's one of the things I love about you. So, on that note, just so I don't take up more of your time than I said I would, Rich, couple things. Have you got any goals you have yet to achieve in the music business? And any last sort of words of wisdom for our listeners before I let you go?
Oh, man, that's a great one, man. Goals. I just want to keep doing everything at the highest of level. So I don't want to be one of these old guys on the drums that is not resembling their former self. Like, I want to ride it into the sunset like Kenny Aronoff. It's like, oh my God, that guy's 70. He plays with like a 16-year-old. So I just want to keep that all together to where I'm always relevant and operating at the highest of levels, no matter what I'm doing. And then I want to maybe just do some other things. I'm going to upgrade all the gear in my recording studio and be working more from there in my home studio in Nashville. And as far as session work, I do want to do some different things. I do want to play on drums and percussion on some soundtracks, movie soundtracks in Los Angeles. I really want to figure out a way to do that. It's just like a career goal. to record in one of the big rooms on like a Marvel movie, or just make creepy sounds for like an indie horror film. Like that's just a different type of work that I want to get into, because I can read, and I'm not really putting my reading to use, doing the work that I do day to day in Nashville. So that's kind of a goal. And then it would be good to maybe write a couple of hit songs in the States. As a songwriter, I've had hits in Canada, South America, Australia, and Europe, and I really want to get some hits just right here in the United States. So, but the idea is just to keep operating at the highest of levels, to stay completely relevant, and keep moving that needle forward in everything I do, whether it be the touring, the recording, or the educational side of things. And then what was the last question?
Just any final / last words of wisdom that you might want to share.
Man. Well, hopefully some of this stuff that's just fallen out of my face, it's all earned by the sweat of my brow, any of this wisdom. And so I'm happy to share it. And I hope someone can take one of these little sound bites out there and go, oh my God, it worked for that guy. Let me try that. But I just wish everybody the best. If there's anything you want to do in life, it's like sharks are in a pool, right? There's blood in the water, and everything you want is on the other side of that pool. You have got to jump in head first, swim with the sharks to make it happen. And just do it. Just do it. Write down what you want to do. Get up every day and do some sort of actionable thing to move yourself closer to that goal. And then once you get there, set another goal. And then set another goal. And then just keep moving forward. And also have fun. Have that smile on your face. Look around. Be humble. Be grateful for your talent. Be grateful for the ability to hone your talent, and then to make a living from your talent. And the pandemic taught me more than anything. I never take anything for granted, but every time I get up on that stage and I play those songs with my friends, I am not taking that for granted, ever.
Well, Rich, that's amazing, man. Thank you so much for your time. Best of luck with the show tonight. And I hope to have you back at some point, man. If this all goes well, I swear we could just talk for hours, man. It's just, it was a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. Thanks so much. And I think you're doing a great thing here with this podcast and blog, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. Episode 1, done and dusted, in the bag, baby. I'd like to thank Rich Redmond for giving me his time. He's such a busy cat, man, so time with guys like him, it's a gift. If you want to learn more about Rich, check out richredmond.com. If you'd like to learn more about Musicians Mentor, check out musicians-mentor.com. My name is Travis Mark. If you like what you heard, please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. I'm not doing this for financial gain. I'm doing this to try to give back to a community that has been so amazing to me. My next guest is going to be Rick Van Horn. He used to be the editor for the Modern Drummer magazine, and he is a working drummer still to this day. So super inspirational stuff. I hope you like what you heard. If you have any criticisms, questions, concerns, feedback of any kind, drop me a message. I'll reply. Thanks for listening, everybody. Keep working. Stay blessed. Laters.